But there is just so much public education that would help turn the tide a bit in terms of our understanding where we live and how we live, and what we can do to make it better.
Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivhausaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered, and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast.
Welcome back to the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Walsh, recording this week from Christchurch, where I've just been attending a Passive House hui with Passive House Institute New Zealand. And we've got Zach. How are you doing, Zach?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Matthew.
Back in Seattle after us, a couple of weeks now, as this will be published, a couple of weeks since Houston.
Indeed. Yeah, it's a lot colder here than in Houston. It's great.
All right. And also joined again this week by Ilka Cassidy. How are you?
I'm doing well. Still a little tired from Houston, but I'm recovering.
And Mary James, how are you?
I'm great. It's nice being back in California.
You've been sharing some photos of your pets, your house pets, your guests.
Yes, I had a not exactly friendly guest today, a scorpion, and little baby scorpions that move a lot faster than the adult one.
Yeah. We're wondering how this has got into your recently updated beautiful passive house,
Yeah.
which should have very small holes to get into.
Yeah, I have
no
to
holes.
That there's been far fewer scorpions in my house since I did the passive house.
I'm not sure that's a great selling slogan. Far fewer scorpions.
Yeah, passive house. Fewer scorpions. Anyway. All right. Well, moving on. Zach, let's do a bit of a quick shout out this week to some special supporters before we get into this week's content.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to start by saying that we have a special Accelerator partner supporter for this week. So this is our Accelerator of the week, and that is Walsh Construction, based in the Pacific Northwest. They're a pioneering construction firm of passive house projects and many, many very cool projects. So it's great to have their support. Thank you to Walsh. And everything we do at Passive House Accelerator comes thanks to support from our sponsors. So a big thank you to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingwe Architects, Glavel, Minutair, Partel, Rockwool North America, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Thanks to our champion sponsors, Bewizo, Gradient, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, PH Air Seal, Proseco, and Source 2050. And a big shout out to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority.
Great. All right. Well, a couple of weeks ago now, when we were in Houston, we learned that next year's Fierce conference will be a combined event with Greenbuild, and it will be in your lovely hometown, Ilka, Philadelphia. So, what can you tell us about Philadelphia?
Well, I guess first of all, we don't have scorpions here, which is a plus. I'm glad about that. And then, I thought I would share some facts about Philadelphia. And I would like to start with Germantown, because that's where I live. And it's a little bit outside Center City. It's still within the city limits, but it's historically actually very, very significant. And I hope that people maybe make time to come out to Germantown. And what's very significant about it is that it was the birthplace of the American anti-slavery movement. It was the site of a Revolutionary War battle, the Battle of Germantown. It was the temporary residence of George Washington while he was president, and the location of the first Bank of the United States. And it's also the place of the first passive house in Pennsylvania.
Aha.
And it was designed by Onion Flats in 2012.
Very cool. So an area deep in pretty rich history, but also some more recent advancements. And Onion Flats will be quite familiar with a lot of listeners or people, associated with the Accelerator, because those projects have been featured, and we've got lots of content, so people can go back and check those out. Onion Flats would be a name that's familiar to a lot of people.
And Tim McDonald,
with Tim McDonald, who was pretty present at FierceCon as well. I should just mention about Greenbuild as well. What do you guys know about Greenbuild?
Well, it's a massive, huge green building conference that has traditionally, I think, had a real strong lead focus, and is, I would say, probably the mainstream green building conference certainly in the United States, but perhaps globally. And they often have really, really big, high-profile speakers. I think Hillary Clinton was the speaker. Big names. And so the fact that FIAS will have this dedicated track as part of Greenbuild, and will have a pavilion on the trade show floor, it's a really big deal in terms of, this is just a really great opportunity to, get the word out to other practitioners who are looking for good ways to achieve low carbon, high performance buildings. And Passive House is so complementary to other standards like LEED and like living building and things. So I think it's a really smart move.
It's huge news. So many times we hear people's journeys beginning with LEED and in our part of the world, Green Star and these other sort of sustainability ratings, and then eventually leading to Passive House, and often doing those in conjunction with each other. So really exciting to share an event and get the word out to a much wider audience. So check that out. There's information if you search it up. Just search up Greenbuild. You'll find information about that. Is November the 12th to the 15th, 2024, which is a little way off, but good to start planning for that now for this time next year. To go and check out Philadelphia in Pennsylvania Convention Center. That would be awesome. All right. Well, let's jump into this week's feature episodes. Ilka or Mary, want to tell us a little bit about Naomi Beal?
Well, Naomi Beal is founder and executive director of Passive House Maine. And as we'll learn in the interview, she came at it from a different direction than a lot of other people do. She was a photographer, photographing buildings and interiors, and that's how she came into Passive House. Sort of an unusual journey.
All right. Well, let's get into it. This is Naomi Beal.
Welcome, Naomi Beal, Executive Director of Passive House Maine, to the podcast. We're so happy that you're joining us. Gosh, I've known you since, 2015, for a while now. And I've always been impressed by your, how much you've accomplished on your own, because for a long time, Passive House Maine, which you founded, was a one-woman organization. Can you tell us a little bit about what gave you the inspiration to start Passive House Maine, and what's kept you going?
Thanks, Mary. I mean, I first say that, of course, it's not a one-person show, even when it felt like I was kind of wrangling the cats. There was a lot of cats to be wrangled. So in that case, way back when, as most people know, or a lot of people know, my background is as a photographer. I came totally through the back door into this work, doing portfolio work for architects here in Maine. And then not wholly unconnected, but I had a year sabbatical in Germany in 2009, 2010. And at that point, I had just barely heard about Passive House. I attended the international conference in Frankfurt in 2009. And we spent the year just south of Frankfurt. And I took a lot of pictures of buildings, including for architects. And it was just like Passive House everywhere all the time, including in Heidelberg at that point. Was just the very, very beginning of what's now known as Bahnstadt, the Passive House quarter, the neighborhood in Heidelberg that's all Passive House. So that was like land was being cleared at that point, and plans were just being made at that point. So we had a full 12 months away, and then when I came back to Maine, a place where I grew up and just love in terms of its environment and a lot of the people, came back to Maine and was like, all right, we got to figure this out, this Passive House thing. There's a lot of cool people in Maine. There's a lot of smart designers, architects, and builders, and we can figure this out. So I came back kind of raring to go. And then, of course, I knew, a bunch of the architects and designers and builders because of the work that I was doing as a photographer. And, it was Kaplan Thompson Architects and a few other, Chris Corson from EcoCore, Chris Briley from Bryburn, who were already like looking at this new kind of construction. So it was like, I think literally a group of 4 or 5 of us first in a coffee shop in 2011, spring of 2011. And then that was just the beginning. And then I was like, people were kind of crawling out of the Great Recession, still a little bit, finding their feet with the in the built environment. There's a lot of builders who kind of left the business, and there weren't a lot of big projects happening, and there definitely weren't a lot of Passive House projects. That was all still kind of new. So it was a lot of just learning this little clutch of builders and architects. Jasper Cruz from Maine Passive House was one of those early ones. And is site walks across the state. And so I managed a lot of the logistics for that, but it was really the community who were literally just trying to learn from each other in those first couple of years.
That is so interesting that you came in as a photographer, because you actually never really think about the photographer being a connector, but they are, right? Because they take pictures of all these different buildings and get to know the architects pretty well. So there's a lot to say about being, the connector between all those different architects that have their interests aligned like that. So I feel like it's really, really interesting. And then you are also responsible for the first Passive House school in Maine. Is that correct?
Oh, that's true. I was a founding board member of Friends School of Portland, which is a local day school, first Friends School north of Boston. I attended Friends schools, and they convinced, really was a funny thing, because it convinced me that I should be the next chair, which I was really not sure about. And but I got some nice votes of confidence there. So I was the chair of the board at the same time that things were heating up with passivhausMAINE. And so I was wearing these two hats, one of my moments of enthusiasm in that time period. And they're really having this opportunity to meld. And I was mindful of not wanting to strong arm the Friends School, which had a very different mission and totally, had its own work to do. But we were building a new building on a new location. Though the board, as I said, didn't commit to Passive House up front, they committed to a decision-making process, which was basically not eliminating Passive House through various decisions. So there were inflection points where we had to make a decision. Where actually are we going to place the physical building? Well, the way this lot was, it was clear that we needed to have some distance so that we could have some solar panels that would be exposed. We needed to put the building on the north side of the lot so that we could control what was south of it and control the exposure there. That was like the very first decision we made. That was at a point of not exactly deciding Passive House, but definitely deciding the net zero capacity. And as we went through the design process, the wall assemblies, the windows, the various appliances, including ventilation, that was really the critical place where we thought we would lose the Passive House potential, because we couldn't afford, either in space or cost, the most efficient Passive House certified ventilation. So we made a compromise in that regard. And I was like, well, it's a shame we didn't make it. We came so close, blah, blah, blah. But as KTA churned out more projections and more, going through the PPHP, we squeaked by, actually. And the ventilation wasn't the deal breaker we thought it would be. And we decided, we can put in some insulation. The board decided it was worth it. At that point, they were completely convinced. They were ready to be a leader in this way and making a commitment. And it became an example for the state. Maine has this remarkable cluster of schools, academic buildings, and institutional buildings, which really was spurred by that first, the FSP project. The very next year, there was a Waldorf school, high school that was built. 2 other day schools added Passive House attachments. Then the Bowdoin has all their dormitories, College of the Atlantic. And then just a couple months ago, last September, University of Southern Maine opened their massive college dormitory. It's a total of somewhere in the neighborhood of 300,000 square feet that's built to international standard. So Maine does have this remarkable little cluster, which I like to credit Friends School of Portland for inspiring.
That's a great story. And but I want to jump, as many people know, retrofits are really a strong interest of mine. So I want to jump to a little bit about the Retrofit Maine initiative that you have been spearheading, and also the exciting award that you recently got. But let's start with what led you to start the Retrofit Maine initiative, and what have you been doing?
Well, the Retrofit Maine started actually quite a while ago under a different name. I don't know if you remember, but it was originally in excuse me, I think 2017 or 2018. At that point, we had a lot of architects and a lot of builders who understood Passive House, who understood how to build new. And it's such a quick flip to understanding, okay, if we know how to build new, but we're building one new building a year or whatever, we're building so few new relative to the number of existing buildings. And that same frame of mind when I came back from Germany in 2010 was there are so many cold people in Maine. And also there's a lot of smart builders and designers. So how can we really make this work on a retrofit basis? The original project was called 50 Houses, and the vision was that in Millinocket, Maine, which is very, very far north at the site of a closed paper mill, which had at that point like almost 30% vacancy in the town. The town was just decimated by the closure of the plant. And so the vision was that we could retrofit 50 single family homes, get scale and expertise in this tiny little town, and then and just demonstrate that you could really scale it. And we were partnering with a New England Forest Foundation, who also wanted to retrofit some buildings in Millinocket, because even people who were looking to redevelop the paper mill, there was literally no place for them to stay. Like there was no accommodation and no rentals at all. So they wanted to renovate some rentals, and they had a budget for each building. And they're like, if we can combine, our 50 houses with their renovation project, that was the vision. But they were already funded and ready to go, and we were not. We were super, super fortunate at that point to have received very meaningful donation from a private individual who, in a fairly casual conversation I had with him at Nessie, giving a shout out to Nessie, bringing together, like-minded people. This guy wanted to support the retrofit specific. The Millinocket project never happened. It was far away. There were a bunch of barriers, a bunch of learning moments, and that is far away from where the expertise was, far away from where the materials were, far away from where the investors would be. And so we kind of shifted it away from those specific 50 houses. We rebranded, because even 50 houses wasn't very clear what we were trying to do. We called it Retrofit Maine and made it less specific to location, and got 3 different examples of retrofits that were going to go, and we were just going to follow somebody else's project as opposed to actually helping redevelop a town. So we're like 3 different projects. There was a farmhouse, a ranch, and a triple decker. And all 3 of those projects completely fell apart in the pandemic. None of them happened. And that was another moment of like, wow, this is just really difficult to get this moving. But we'd done a lot of prep work, and the award that we just won was from the DOE Buildings Up challenge, is about scaling retrofits, is literally what they're trying to do. And it was framed as a prize rather than a grant. It's a prize for work already done. And so it's literally, we will be receiving $400,000 in our bank account in another week or so. And then we'll use that money to fulfill the vision that we presented. So we have a vision that we presented to the Buildings Up people. There's no case of there's no reimbursement. There's no quarterly reports in the same way that a traditional kind of grant system would be. But what we said we were going to try, this is now iteration number 3 for Retrofit Maine, is creating local training centers to train local builders, focusing on non-traditional local builders to renovate local buildings. And because We are situated in Freeport. Our first training center will be right here in Freeport. Trying to learn from our lessons in Millinocket and just keep things close, keep them simple. Our connections are strong here. We'll go for the place with best odds rather than most challenging. And working with our local community organizations to identify households that really need help. And meanwhile, create this cadre of building experts, retrofit experts locally. And we basically have 18 months to prove to buildings up that we are doing something interesting and exciting and scalable, and scaling of retrofits, and then apply for the next round of funding. And I love their assumption, or their best case scenario is that everybody who qualified for phase 1 will also qualify for phase 2. And along with the money, we also have something like 140 hours of expertise as part of that prize. So just allowing us to augment the skills that we have with some skills that we might not have, and really try to make our project work. We have the Freeport Center already taking steps in that direction. Lewiston was the other one that we said we would do. As you know, Lewiston just suffered an incredible tragedy last week. It's a community that has had a lot of challenges. That's now think about it slightly different as of last week, but it's a very urban city, especially relative to Freeport. So it has similar small buildings, and those triple deckers are in Lewiston, which is a different kind of building than we have here in Freeport, but it's still like underbuilt, wood framed, a lot of delayed maintenance, and people that are spending too much to keep themselves comfortable and safe. Yeah, the vision is that we need it to be kept to focus on the local communities very specifically, and not have it be an abstract problem. Mm-hmm. Have it literally, be, we're trying to get this very specific family in a very specific to update their house, and we have these streams of funding, and we have these experts and these community organizations who know these families well, and to actually make it happen. And in terms of numbers of builders and numbers of houses, my latest statistics are that in the weatherization program here in Maine, between 2015 and 2023, we have weatherized something in the neighborhood of 2,400 buildings in the last 7 years. And Cornell did a study a year or so ago about how many buildings they think Maine should, like a path to decarbonization would include retrofitting 50% of all buildings built before 2000 before 2040. And sort of be rough back of the envelope calculation estimates that's about 125,000 buildings to be retrofitted between now and 2040. That's 17 years. So 2,500 in the past 8 years, 125,000 in the next 17 years. And the question is, how is that actually going to happen? And who's actually going to do that work? Like, not let alone how we're going to pay for it, but who literally is going to do the work. And so we can't limit ourselves in terms of who we think a traditional builder might be, like it's all hands on deck. And through these local training centers and partnerships, we think that we can really influence the way we think about retrofits, the way we think about who's doing those retrofits, and the way they fit into the context of decarbonization at the state level, and kind of meeting the grid needs as well. And not only that, in Maine, we have incredible fortune to have this like low carbon insulation material being manufactured right here at one of those mills that was shut down, not Millinocket, but Madison. And we're just so lucky that we can at the same time promote the retrofit work. We can also be promoting kind of traditional forest industries and forest economy here in Maine. And that is, if we were trying to use Scutex, which would still have the amazing carbon properties, but all of the baggage of being from across the ocean, it would be a very different story. And since this is being manufactured right here in Maine, we have, it's just, rooting for the home team across the board. It's really wonderful.
Yes, and I understand that not only is the wood fiberboard being manufactured in Maine, but that Opal Build is actually making retrofit panels, which
I heard that. I heard Tim say that. Yeah, I have a vision. I'm sure he has a vision too. I bet we can work together to make that vision a reality. I'm very optimistic about that. Maine, in addition to our incredible cluster of schools, Passive House schools, we have an amazing cluster of panelization outfits. And, using timber HP as part of those panels. And we just also, what was announced just a few days after our announcement, that Maine has been identified as one of these technical hub. That's a situation that will help spur the CLT development of CLT production as well, which would be another amazing addition.
And even all the panelization needs basically an education entity as well, right?
Yeah.
Because architects, builders, they also have to learn how to design towards panelization and also to install.
Yeah, passivhausMAINE has really nice relationships with our, we have a whole training series that goes literally across the state from like Fort Kent, Presque Isle. We didn't teach in Fort Kent, but Presque Isle, which is way far north, to York, which is way far south, Western Maine, way down east in Machias and Mount Desert Island. We've been all over the state doing trainings. In that, we have formed some really nice relationships with all of the community colleges, and have talked with at the community college level, creating a retrofit program, a 2-year certificate program for retrofit specifically. I literally just this morning signed a letter of support for University of Maine Orono and a curriculum development in building science specific works, and there that was in the forestry department. So all of the panelization, CLT, low carbon or embodied carbon materials there. We have a lot of amazing potential for doing just fabulous work here in Maine.
That's really exciting. You have a community college who's going to be developing a retrofit curriculum, and hopefully
we're working on it. That's not polished at all, but yes, that's where I'm aiming. Like, we could do all the classes and all the trainings we want, but we don't necessarily need to take over the existing setup. The community colleges are built all over the state. We're assuming that we can supplement, augment, complement the pieces that are already in place.
Yeah, I think it's so important to actually target the next generation. Not just, it's really important what you talked about, training builders that are already working on these projects, like as an immediate way to build better. But I think the key really is to get the next generation involved, get them be aware of other methods of building, and then also learn about all the new technologies, because as I mentioned before, just the approach of panelization or CLT, I mean, it's a whole different skill set that needs to be addressed here. So I think it's great that you're already partnering with these schools, and I think that needs to happen all over the country.
Yeah. The other thing about our flag, what I'm prematurely calling our flagship training center, is right in, and we also haven't signed space yet, but our plan, and I have reason to believe we'll be successful in this, is to be right in downtown Freeport, which is a very classic kind of outlet, very touristy shopping area. And our vision as part of our outreach and sort of education is to have a storefront right in Freeport that will be also walk-in available for people who are walking by, literally right on or off of Main Street in Freeport, to just carry on with that, just that education. Like, what everybody has a lot of people, everybody lives in a space that probably needs some sort of improvement. And how can our personal decisions impact the greater carbon goals, the greater energy reduction, the greater, evolution of retrofit at all? And, what can you do, and what are other people doing? Like, Maine has some of the oldest building stock in the country, has the oldest population in the country living in that oldest building stock, and the proportionally highest number of people burning number 2 heating oil. Like, we do not have natural gas infrastructure, not very much in Maine, because it's just too spread out and rural. So we're like incredible polluters. Additionally, we have the most common building type in Maine is a mobile home. We have 60,000 of them in Maine, which are not really possible to renovate, like with any kind of sense of ROI at all. They're just difficult. So there's a lot of challenges.
And I just want to go back. You mentioned, that you're already doing trainings around Maine. Can you just fill that in a little bit for people who don't know about this?
We were fortunate last year to have received funding to do a series of trainings to help existing builders get up to speed with the new building codes. So Maine has a couple of other remarkable features. We have no contractor licensing. So any old buddy can hang up a shingle and say, I'm a builder. And that happens a lot. And had a bit of a Wild West feeling. Like, we had no energy code. Our energy code was from 2009. It was updated to 2015, including needing a blower door test for new construction. And that was like really not well understood, let's say, and resented. And so we were like, well, passivhausMAINE, our members are mostly not concerned by the building code at all. It's like not impacting their work at all, because they've figured out systems to reach airtightness levels and insulation levels and an understanding of continuous exterior insulation in our climate. And so we made a proposal for the governor's energy office that we create these trainings across the state, and just, at the same time promoting passivhaus principles and passivhaus approach to new construction. Also, just some really basic information about how to get to code, even on a building that's not striving for passivhaus, but there's materials and strategies that can make that more easy, and we'll teach you. So we had those trainings across the state, and it touches a nerve. There's a lot of hunger for greater understanding of better building techniques. Not across the board. I mean, there's definitely people who are like, you don't need to tell us how to build our houses. We've been doing it. You know, there's those guys exist out there, but most are really thirsty, hungry for more information. And honestly, the trainings don't get up to Presque Isle, Maine. They don't get over to Greenville, Maine, or up to Machias. And we have gone there and met people where they are. We just tried to reduce all the barriers. Distance, we go to you. Cost, they're very cheap. It's $25. They were subsidized by private foundation and public money, both to make them affordable and still pay us what we need to pay. There were great workshops with 3 different instructors, like very dynamic and taught often by women, and just creating a sense of kind of fun and enthusiasm for building code, for why code is better, and like what the advantages are, and going all the way to passive house, of course, part of our messaging. And as much as we're training the individuals to actually do the work, there's a whole set of community engagement opportunities so that homeowners can also, just as you say, understand overarchingly, where are we trying to go with this? What's realistic for us in our house? And then have contact with people who can actually do the work as well. But there is just so much public education that would help turn the tide a bit in terms of our understanding where we live and how we live, and what we can do to make it better.
Well, there's a lovely, inspiring note to end on, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I really hope that the whole networking and making partnerships all over the country is going to work out really fast.
All over the country. And passivhausMAINE has a MOU with United Nations Economic Commission for Europe and United Nations Environmental Program. And my special interest in those international connections that we have is absolutely around the retrofit world and the training world. And I have been really inspired by the work that I see in other countries, and I'm really happy to also do work that might be inspiring to others.
And that was Naomi Beal of passivhausMAINE. Let's start with you, Mary. What were your highlights or outtakes from talking to Naomi?
Well, definitely the prize from Buildings Up, the Department of Energy, was the highlight for me, because I just think it's really exciting that somebody who's been trying to figure out a way to increase the pace of retrofits in Maine is getting funding to work with local community organizations and hopefully have a more successful route to scaling up retrofits, working closer to home where she is based, and really having a whole local plan. I thought was great. Great avenue for success.
Yeah. I think I met a few people from Maine when we were in Houston. It's pretty cold up there, right?
Definitely.
Indeed.
A pretty harsh climate. I mean, we're talking there's parts of Maine that are further north than Canada.
Right. It's definitely a wintry state.
Yeah. So great to hear some stuff really good stuff going on there, and obviously needed. She talked about a huge number of people just living in mobile homes, which I imagine are not the best insulated and just not the best living conditions. So definitely a big need there to improve the state of building, and also a huge number of retrofit work needing to be done as well. Ilka, what was outtakes for you?
I think, I mean, you mentioned those mobile homes, and she said that, yeah, it's hard to get them to passive house level. But she was also talking about their approach of how to go about educating people and really going into the homes of people and seeing, okay, how do they live and how do they need to improve the way they live? How do they need to improve their living conditions and their buildings, and learning through doing that. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And it really resonated and reminded me of some conversations that we actually had in Wiesbaden when we was there at the conference, where I attended the session where there was a conversation: what is more effective, like the top down approach, like going from the code and like government down and asking for passive house, or the bottom up approach where people just kind of take it into their own hands and just go for it and do it. So I feel like listening to her, it sounds like the way it happened for her, it was kind of both, right? So she got this pretty big amount of money to put these programs into place, but then she really, really relies on the boots on the ground to get it done. Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting, really good approach, I thought.
I like that approach of partnering with community colleges and other institutions, education organizations, and not necessarily having to do the education all yourself, but maybe providing some of the curriculum or guiding the curriculum, and then getting the word out through that means, which I can relate to here and in other parts, where education is often talked about as a real need to upskill the industry to building science and how passive house works, because they're not necessarily getting it through traditional builder training or architect training. But that's where passive house affiliates and groups like passivhausMAINE can provide real value in helping develop some of that curriculum, so that then other people can present that material and get it into the courses that professionals are doing. Zach, how about you?
Well, I think that last point you just made is I was thinking the same thing. I mean, just this is a really challenging problem. I mean, I think that the project of retrofitting, whatever she said, 125,000 homes between now and 2040, and that's not necessarily to passive house, but to significantly improve them. That's a big deal, and so we don't have time to try to replicate a whole a separate school system for that project. It's really really important that we tap into the existing resources and expertise and infrastructure there to make that happen. And I was also struck by the trainings they do, and that they're training both for about code and about passive house in their work, and I think that with the magnitude of the retrofit project that needs to happen, the fact that there's so much oil being, that so much of the heating is from oil. I mean, that's a huge right now. It's a huge area of source of pollution, but it's a huge opportunity as well, to dramatically reduce carbon emissions from the homes in Maine if you can electrify. But in order to electrify, I mean, you also want to couple that with improvements to the envelope so that your heat pumps don't have to be massive and ridiculously expensive and all that. And so I think that kind of willingness to see this as a continuum, kind of, and it's not certainly in many cases passive house can be the answer, but if we make significant strides in weatherization plus electrifying, we're also, like that would be a big deal. And given that we're talking about, I don't know how many X's we're talking about between 2,400 homes that were weatherized in the last 7 years and the 125,000 homes that need to be retrofitted in the next 17 years. We're going to have to be flexible with with what the approach is. Like, how do we optimize? Yeah, how do we make that happen as fast as we can? So
it's not something we can just kind of gradually ramp up the existing systems. It needs a whole new method and a whole new workforce, a whole new way of doing it.
Yeah. And there's always, I mean, there is a really strong relationship between the world of home performance and weatherization and passive house, in that they're all looking at, I mean, we're looking at building science, looking at, making things more airtight. They're kind of on the same continuum. So I think there's some, it makes sense that they would be in their trainings, they'd be kind of, thinking of it in that kind of continuum way.
Yeah. What I liked too, when she mentioned in the beginning how she got the Friend school to be passive house or passive house certified, even, is that they just didn't rule it out, right? They didn't actually set it as a goal to become passive house certified, but they just made the decisions not to rule it out, and then step by step they managed to make the right decisions to be at the end certified. So I thought that was a really, really good approach, and probably a lot less scary for people that haven't done passive house before.
And I appreciate the kind of cluster of conditions that can make scaling up retrofits more likely that she talked about, such as having a forestry industry that can make the insulation that they may use in the retrofit. And then also having existing companies that already create panels, so that there is a prefab industry that they can tap into to help with the scaling up of retrofits. So I thought that was exciting. And again, of course, the education piece. I love that she was talking with community colleges about developing a special curriculum aimed at retrofits, because, as she was saying, you can't depend on the existing builders. We got to create and train more builders to understand what's needed to be done. So I thought that was great.
It sounds like there's going to be some wood fiber insulation locally available soon, which is exciting. And a big part of that's the carbon discussion. She mentioned about CLT, but also really making efforts to reduce the carbon for some of their work, and the availability of locally produced wood fiber insulation ticks a lot of boxes. I think it'd be good to explore that in a bit more detail as that comes to fruition, because it's pretty exciting on lots of fronts.
Yeah, Timber HP is, I think, the company she was referring to, and we have an interview that Mark Willey did with Timber HP in Massachusetts at the Building Science Summer Camp that we are going to release soon. So hopefully we can time it so that we can include a link to that interview in the show notes if people are interested in learning more.
And as well as the technical aspects, the carbon, there's a story there about how shutting down paper mills affected the community, and loss of work, but then revitalizing that with getting those factories up and running again, but producing insulation instead of high quality paper. So it's a great story. So be good to link to that and follow that progress.
And just to clarify, Timber HP, that insulation is already on the market. You can get it. Awesome.
They're coming out with more products, like broadening their range with boards and that they're testing boards at the moment.
And bat, right? They've got a bat product that they're. I don't. Is the bat released yet? I'm not sure. It might be. Yeah.
I don't know. We played with it in Houston, which was it was good to see. Good stuff. Anything else, Ilka, Mary?
Well, I think I just really appreciate how she just kept going. She explained how the early efforts weren't as successful as she hoped them to be, and she just kept going. And I feel like that's a lot of us are experiencing the same. And yeah, we just can't stop. We just have to be persistent.
Yep. Nice. Very good. All right. Thank you for that. Thank you again, Mary, Ilka. Really appreciate it. Zach, have you got anything that you want to plug?
Well, yes. I mean, three things. So one is don't miss our Passive House Accelerator live Zoom events that happen every Wednesday. So that's Thursday for you, Matthew. And we've got great stuff coming up this month and beyond. Secondly, Reimagine Buildings, the YouTube channel. We've got really great videos publishing there on a regular basis. So recently we did a big affordable housing project in the Bronx called 425 Grand Concourse, designed by Detner Architects. And this the most recent video is hosted by Ilka, and it is a crazy beautiful art gallery, passive house, 21st century modern, as the owner calls it, project. So in some ways, these two videos could not be more different in terms of their building type and things, but really fascinating and great eye candy for the most recent, for both of them. And then finally, I think we can start rolling this out. And we are really excited to be doing a 24-hour around the world virtual event called Reimagine Buildings 24. So one planet, 24 hours, 24 buildings, exemplary buildings that we're going to be featuring on this global event. A lot of really exciting community partners are part of it and great speakers. That's going to be on March 7th and 8th. So it's going to kick off at noon Eastern on March 7th and end at noon Eastern on March 8th. And we will be rolling. We will have just made an announcement, I think, the day before this episode goes live, but we'll have lots more details to come, and we hope that everybody listening will sign up and join us.
That's going to be huge.
Yeah, it's a big deal for us.
Awesome.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, looking forward to that. All right, and thank you for the introductory info on Philadelphia, Ilka. Look forward to looking more into green build for this time next year. So thank you, and thank you, Mary, as well, for another great interview. We'll be back again next week on the Passive House Podcast.